Welcome back. You here with Goldberg. Today I'll be talking about some further crash outs and the odd way that interactions between men and women are discussed on the internet.com. So, just briefly, a sign things may be getting worse is that I was approved for a Delta Amex card, which previously got rejected from a silly reason, just you had made another application in the last 12 months. What's striking, they upped the bonus to 80,000 miles from 40 or 50, and if you take that strictly as cash, redemption for travel is likely higher. It's 800 bucks. Let's say when you get to the second year, they hit you with the annual fee if you can't cancel it on time. That's still 650. Pretty solid, especially for this category of cards. And there's some discounts on airfare. I'll probably use it towards the intended Argentina trip. What is truly crucial is to get that bonus. You have to spend $3,000 in 6 months, not 3 months. So they've dramatically expanded the period of time. I suspect that means they understand there's softer consumer sentiment. Another example of this is the Bank of America cash card. And I was kind of angry. I should have canceled it 2 years ago so I could re up for this. Not only is there a $200 bonus for spending, what, maybe $1,000 in 90 days, but they're giving you 6% cash back for the first year. The only other card that got close to that was Blue Cash Preferred from American Express, but that's not the most useful because now I don't believe you're permitted to use them at Costco, and then the discount grocer won't take them because of the fees. Costco is pretty much just Citi, and I actually think Citi has great credit cards. That's a couple of my regular ones. As the economy worsens, Goldberg is scheming ever more. So I've calculated I need about 320K in addition. So that would wipe out the mortgage and then some further capital, which would allow me to deploy it strictly in broad-based funds and conservative dividend funds. I could generate 12 to 15K, if not 20K a year in dividends, not touch them, just let them compound or reinvest, and I'd be pretty good to go. That is outside of 401k, Roth, my Bitcoin holdings, which I'm not going to sell. XRP, some say is a cope, although there are legit copes that are going up thousands of percent, whereas XRP actually has a potential use case. And then if you believe Tom Lee, I need to accrue some more Ethereum as let's say it's on the lower end. You're still talking about a pretty solid investment if they hit the numbers that are being discussed. It could all be hype, but I'd rather be on that bandwagon for the price than another, oh, I should have gotten it sooner, lol.com. And that's always been my design, multifaceted approach. People will say, what about stock this, finance that? If you look at the Weimar Republic, I've mentioned this many times before, a safe place to be was stocks, especially dividend paying stocks. So keep that in mind if you're outside of the just precious metals or crypto umbrella. Moving on to the news. Man stabbed by boyfriend, expected to fully recover. Something about this headline didn't sit well with me. You guys definitely shouldn't sit on it. Then we have the Melissa Town case. She did some pretty horrendous things to her daughter, but was acquitted for reasons of insanity in the state of Texas. And the story stood out to me because those of us who believe there should be some regulations on who precisely is permitted to reproduce always are hit with this avalanche of concern trolling. Oh, you're trying to play God, anti-natalist, that goes against Catholic social policy. These are the folks who, whether they will accept it or not, clearly they don't because they think they're morally superior, are perpetuating systems that lead to the abuse of the innocent, including kids. What do I know though? We'll just leave it at that. Continue. Okay, so this was a senior citizen brother, I'm guessing boomer. They got away with it for almost 10 years. If it wasn't for those meddling whiteys. But he hired a pookie to dispatch his Keisha wife because he didn't want to lose his property in divorce. Granted, I get it, he's older, but if he had just tuned into Batman Beyond 6'4", he could have avoided all this problem. Folks, don't get married if you're not willing to give away your assets to the woman. I mean, I'm sure those in lesbian relationships, gay relationships might be different, but don't do that because it's high probability it's going to happen. And if you have to go to the point of hiring a hitman, it just seems a little bit extreme. He could have engaged her in a MC Hammer dance off and she gets too excited and just keels over. You don't have to actually get a guy with a gun, bro. All right, so here is a phenomenal tale from the American Midwest. To begin, lower left-hand corner, we have British Nick Fuentes, recently exposed as a practicing homosexual, as is tradition. In the upper right-hand corner, it's slightly less melanated Normie. And this is quite common where fellows who struggle with gals IRL, they're not getting any play on Hing or Bumble or Coffee Meets Care Bear. They determine, well, this gal who's presenting as an adult, or maybe she's open that she's underage, I'll be the exception. I'll successfully slide through her crack, and it'll be phantasmic. Well, she says, let's meet in a wooded area to wood. Oh, sorry, that didn't go right. Notably, a fantastic location to not be set up. He arrives, but she had this scheme to rob him. And there's a lot of these cases on crime channels where it was the teenage girlfriend who is the mastermind, but she has the fellow in the centerfold, Neutrogena Mayo Clarence, pop Normie a couple times, and so Normie reaches his expiration date. As it happens, Clarence got 40 plus years to life in prison. The pudgy Becky is going to be out by the age of 30. She got about 15 years. And once she is released, she'll perhaps find another Clarence to do her dirty work. It stands out to me because the other day I was driving down the road and on the sidewalk there's two couples not walking precisely abreast because given the dimensions of one female it was impossible. You've got a Clarence with this tall, in shape, Keisha, I suppose, mocha tone. She's not heavy, but she had provisions in the right places, showcased by these spandex shorts. There was that YouTuber in the manosphere, I forget the name of his channel, but he described it as, it was a very round, very soft, very caramel bum. Yeah. And yet this Clarence, he's looking down at the sidewalk, he's just milling, he's depressed, looks like he wants to end it all. But the Clarence on the other side, shoulders out, chest sucked in, or tits, and he just looks like he's on cloud nine. He's happy as a clam, which is well explained by the fact that he was walking with his blonde, and she's a BBW. So we arrive at Twitter X and the worldly wisdom of Mr. Star. My biggest regret in life at 37 is not seeking a serious relationship younger. To you younger guys, a lot of people tell you to go around chasing tail, tell you have plenty of time. You don't. Life is short, man. He continues, I was a man salute in college, and years after, I moved overseas and did the snuggles tourism thing in Latin America and Asia, desperately seeking that XY chromosome booty. It's not worth it. Snuggles is not that important. If I could go back, I would have wiped up my senior year of college girlfriend. That's assuming she would allow you to do that. Now, some have accused Mr. Star of, in fact, being in his 20s, and he's a content farmer trying to get engagement. Would not surprise me if he's the type of dude who pretends he was successful as a red-pilled PUA and is now reformed, has become a Tradcon. You have to remember, we say Muslims with taqiyya, the concept where they can tell a lie if it advances their interests. Now the Sunnis are going to flood into the comments, oh no, that's only Shia, they're not real Muslim. Thank you, appreciate it. But these trad Christian guys have a similar approach. They will lie to young men at the drop of a hat if it advances their moral philosophy. They apparently don't feel that God is going to judge them for that behavior. The deception is acceptable if it leads to more following their flock. Sadly, the consequence is it will cause quite a few young men to tether themselves to bad news women simply for the sake of saving the world, if you will. You know, they'll tell you, my Orthodox parish is brimming with young women who want to get married. But does that mean what, you had 0 and now you have 1? But by all means, whip out your smartphone. Film these hundreds of young ladies who don't have a man. I'm actually tempted to go and revisit some of these places because when I did my expedition, that was not the case. The ones that had the highest ratio of females were the consumer capitalist institutions, not these trad models. Also, when these guys, assuming they get married and 15 years or so, they're a girl dad, are they going to try to do an arranged marriage between themselves and one of these lonely trad guys? Or will they turn into, like most boomer parents, these feminists who say their daughters get to choose whatever they want? I was talking to some boomers because they're big into the whole you got to be religious and attend all the time. So you've been doing this for years. In that time, have you identified a single solitary nice girl from a good family who is looking for someone? No. And even if someone says, hey, come and meet this girl, you should talk to that girl, they rarely want to make the introduction. So they desire the salvation of society or social security, the welfare state, but they want to individualize the solutions to the collective problem. That's always stood out in a major way. We have a few irate responses. Just seek a serious relationship, dude. Don't get into situationships with attractive females. Wow, as if Gen Z is known for anything, it's the overwhelming abundance of marriageable women. He's just being negative. Guy who banged all the women tells you why you should now marry the ones he banged and tossed aside. Correct. Let's assume Mr. Starr is 37 and got with all these ladies. Is he now going to one of his conquests and saying, hey, you're early 30s, you're depressed, you're on SSRIs, you drink, let's make it work? The saving grace of Jesus, or maybe you're not even religious, but this new dawn where you need to start a family. So you're going to exclude the women you've slept with, correct? Because now you need a more virtuous model, a more submissive, innocent one. This has been a theme really throughout the manosphere. The guys who turn Tradcon, they don't want the grace of Jesus to apply to the women that they slept with. And here we have Helen, who appears to be a feminist. The middle-aged man who wouldn't leave my 20-year-old daughter alone on her flight to London today. The AirPods and book were your clue. She did not want to speak to you. The word no was your clue. She didn't want the alcohol you were insisting on buying her. You're a creep. Leave woman alone. Yeah, you would have some guys who will push back against the doomerism. I'm in my 40s. I'm dating a 20-year-old. You're all losers. The reality is a lot of these women don't want to be approached. And even if you get into conservative circles and you're a guy who's above the age of 30 who preferably wants a younger wife, don't expect the families to necessarily be on board with it. They're going to have the mentality much like this Helen person right here. So your mileage may vary, and I'm not going to discourage anyone, sure. Get into religion if you think it's going to help you as a person. Don't do it because you expect to get a wife. You'll burn out very quickly. And cold approach, whatever, if you want, just realize this is also the way it's perceived. So if you're a middle-aged guy who's not youthful looking, if she doesn't find you appealing, you're certainly playing with fire. Next up, we have our friend Normie McDonald, and he's responding to a 4chan post about how there's billions of women out there, but you probably won't meet the one who's right for you. He says young men need to be a little arrogant. They need to feel invincible and believe in divine providence and laugh at the face of wimber tales and their expectations are unrealistic. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to become a doomer and resign. I mean, clearly, especially as a young man, you should go out and garner experiences if you can. But you will see people in the replies, and it just amazes me how off the mark they are. So let's get past these silly ads. It really puts a tension on my stomach to read this. To know this is true. To know my choices continue to expand into freedom. Oh my God. Here's the woman. Go outside, work with your hands. Okay, so we've been doing the bathroom remodel. And I was helping the handyman guy because he's basically retired, doesn't have a lot of help that he pays for. So we stripped out the vinyl and the plyboard and cleaned the stuff. And then, of course, you have to drain the water heater because we're going to do underneath there. And, the actual spigot doesn't work, so we had to mess with that. I actually used a monkey wrench and had to undo the entire spigot. Then it comes bursting out, drain it. But even to get to that point, we had to remove the commode. And so you flush it a few times once the water's off, and to get the rest out. I'm sure some people have a pump, but I sponged it out. Okay. You're working with your hands. You know, I worked as a tradesman. I worked in a plant, did a lot of maintenance stuff. Women don't care about that. It's like the whole Toby Keith song, High Maintenance Woman. Just because you're fixing the leak in her apartment does not mean she's turned on by your plumber's crack. So garner skills because you want to. Don't make yourself miserable because you think it's going to help you get the other side. I remember there was a guy who I knew became a carpenter because Jesus was a carpenter. Now, this particular dude kept knocking up random women and not taking care of them, which is actually not so uncommon with some of these trad men. And I might talk about that. I wanted to address that Life of Carl video, which I just came across a few months back. Oh, finally, here's a guy saying, oh, as a white man, because usually there was another comment, but it disappeared. Uh, as a black man, am I allowed to do this? They all introduce themselves as black. This is the first time I've seen as a white man. My dating pool is limited to white, 18 to 30, not taking mood regulation, not a communist. Yeah, he's right. There's not a whole lot of options, but where's this other guy? Okay, this dude, D.W. McAley. To be perfectly honest, I'm a high value man. They also need to get over a fear of rejection. The only reason I developed game is I got turned down repeatedly and learned from it. As an aside, my wife still claims I have no game. I say again, my wife claims I have no game, but apparently I had enough to win her over. Wait, your wife says you have no game. Does that mean she's used to other guys who had game previously? Wait, so you are not the first one there? Ooh. Yeah, this is what the dude looks like. So you got your looks match. If you shaved his beard, they would be twinsies. It's always these fellows. More than probably, they were not the first to their wife. They have the looks match, and they're here to finger wag about confidence and game and numbers and whatnot. I was like, dude, good. You achieved the bare minimum, and you want to be this arbiter and instructor. It is, I mean, I suppose by today's standards, it's a flex, but also not really. Now, some of you might be wondering, what do you have to look forward to, especially if you go into the trad realm of dating?
Because we both struggled with getting too physical in our previous relationships, we decided that we were not going to kiss at all until marriage, and we did that. We dated for 2 years and never kissed.
So you had fun in your previous relationship, but then you're going to be all stoic. And in their defense, as I mentioned earlier, the only way this Tradcon model works for the bulk of men is that a lot of them are going to have to take a roasty or a single mom. There is no possible, diorama where somehow everyone's going to get a chaste woman. In fact, when they tell you to join some small denomination that's not even close to the majority in most states, they're basically communicating that it's over, because if 5,000 guys see this type of post, even nationwide, that's going to be significant for some small Russian descended institution. There's just a complete lack of preparedness. So you can tell they realize once you get to the point where the guy follows your advice and it doesn't work out, what do they start resorting to? Well, I guess it's good that you don't reproduce because you're so negative. Or one guy got very upset. He was saying, there's a dream out there for those who have the balls to seize it. Buy 17 acres. Build a house for $35K. Down the road, there's a conservative family with a sweet 21-year-old daughter who works as a seamstress and doesn't give a lick about feminism. I mean, this is fan fiction. It's choose your own adventure. As I noted earlier, they have no qualms about lying to young men just to promote an agenda. How many people actually have this set up? I mean, you have to be utterly delusional. But that's what you see with the internet, especially with the anons, because they know they'll never be held accountable. Now, keep in mind, I've dated a number of Catholics myself, one of whom was very devout. She was an utter nightmare from the get-go. Also dated an Orthodox who was, I would say, above average in terms of conduct, although you see the same behavioral traits that you'll come across one from Hinge in the sense of not clear about what they want, terrible communicators, and a tendency to kind of drop off, disappear, then reemerge like it's a magic trick kind of thing. Some will go, well, that's your fault. Yeah, as we know, conservative types always blame men because they have no other recourse. I'm just trying to make you realize there is no free lunch. So these routes, which may be viable for certain people, you are still going to come across a lot of the same travails that people mention in a Fresh and Fit video. Proceeding on, we have Diane Yap, who is a Grace Cheng. She garnered some popularity with snow gnats because she was criticizing brothers, but more recently, I think she got rejected by a high tier normie, and she's frustrated that essentially she should be the looks match for a lot of inkwells, so she tends to lash out. Ironically, I saw Grace Cheng who looked much like this, although more attractive at the gym. She appeared to be like China, actually from the mainland, just her appearance and her vibe. She was going up to the machines and doing like 2 reps, then wiping it off and continuing. Glancingly attractive, probably slightly autistic, so maybe I'll cold approach. If I can't do that, then it's certainly over. Well, Diane Yap got in some hot water because she went after this Hickman fellow's wife. And what she's saying is correct in this tweet, but she was impolite. Are you an inkwell or neat who is miserable, broke, and has no prospects? Don't worry, a woman out there will still marry you. So she might look like this. That works for you, right? In her defense, there are probably some fellows out there who could have, by this stage, turned their fiat into cuck shares, gotten hitched. It's just that they have particular standards that may not be entirely realistic, or they have a GF, but they know she's mentally unstable. They don't want to get tied down, legally speaking. And so it's akin to the Wignats who will complain about demographic prospects, but also have this fantasy that the shield maiden's going to emerge from the forest with an olive leaf bikini and everything will go well at that stage. I'm not here to tell you what path you should take. I will note it's important to consider your own motivations because you'll see them post a video or like this thing. It's what every man wants, a trad wife and kids. That's all that he cares about. And sure, there's probably some merits to it. But they don't tell you, perhaps because they're selling a message and they don't want to admit they may have made a mistake or they haven't reached that realization quite yet, is that married men are often desperately trying to escape from that union and maintain a sense of autonomy, of individuality. So when I was a kid, there was a lot of people in a small house, and there was no expectation of privacy whatsoever. I remember the upstairs bathroom was adjoining the kitchen and a hallway, 2 doors, neither of them could be locked. So the only place you really could get any solitude was the downstairs bathroom, where you could actually shut the door. But anything you did in that house, watching a movie, playing a video game, someone sticking their nose into it. If you get something in the mail addressed to you, someone else is going to open it first. God forbid you have a journal or a diary, someone else is going to read it. There's no boundaries at all. And up until I bought this house, which now that changed because there's a tenant, so it's a little disruptive, I never had that experience of some measure of your own sanctum, your own independence. Even when I've dated girls, I don't give them access to my abode unescorted. I don't give them whatever content I produce in my books because you have to have some semblance of this is my space. Well, if you look at married men, you'll see them trying to do boys' weekends. They'll become workaholics. People blame capitalism, but in many cases it's because they don't want to be at home in all the din, the squalor, the overstimulation. They'll go out to eat by themselves. They'll take trips alone. This is because they're not content with always being around this chaos, no matter how much they insist that it's the answer to all your problems is just getting married and having some kids. Take this fellow who was in my comment section for a while, constantly haranguing me. I'm too negative. Oh, you're too bitter, XYZ, the go to normie complaint. Well, eventually I said, you're not adding anything of value. You're never suggesting any books to read, any content to watch. You have nothing constructive to add. You're not being my foil, but helping people in any shape whatsoever. Says, all right, go and seek your fortune. I happen to see him just because I recognize the name of the avatar. He's a regular in Raymond's comment section, which is kind of ironic because Raymond is not the most upbeat person, but he has good reason for that. This fellow, in a one message he puts, admits to being almost 50 years old, married in the early 2000s, and a girl dad. And I'm going, well, hold on a second. You're claiming that marriage and having kids is the best thing ever, and yet you are a connoisseur of, let's not say doomer, Grimlord content. How does that work out? See, a happily married man would be someone maybe watching DIY videos and getting his kids involved, perhaps some stuff about the economy. He's not going to be always consuming the content of largely single men who have gripes about finances or dating, whatever it might be. And so that's where you catch them, red as can be, as a pepper. They are not happy. This is why they do escapism on the internet, or they play video games, or all the other stuff I mentioned. So if you want to get married, that's good. I encourage you, if you have a good option, a unicorn, just remember your independence is going to be largely vanquished. You're going to be in an environment, unless you have a huge house or ton of property, it's going to be tons of stimulation. And you may find yourself actually resenting that. It'll all come down to the person. But if you're the guy who's thrilled to be married and have kids, but you're always in doomer comment sections whining about the world, maybe you're not exactly as joyful as you want others to believe.